There are Hollywood legends, and then there is Robert Redford, the golden man with the silver smile, the actor who turned silence into poetry and sunlight into art. But behind the calm blue eyes that defined an era of American cinema, there lived a quiet storm, a pain so deep, so private, that even those who loved him most never fully understood it. Not until his wife, in the twilight of his life, revealed the secret he had carried for decades. Robert Redford's death in 2025 shook the world not simply because a legend was gone, but because for the first time the world glimpsed the truth behind the charm, the heartbreak that shaped every film, every frame, every quiet pause that made him unforgettable. His story, as it turns out, was not merely one of fame or fortune. It was the story of a man who searched all his life for peace and found it only at the very end. Robert Redford was born on August 18, 1936 in Santa Monica, California. Not in the glittering heart of Hollywood, but on its working-class edges. His father, Charles Redford Sr., was a milkman who later became an accountant. His mother, Martha Hart Redford, was the kind of woman who saw art where others saw ordinary life. She encouraged young Robert to draw, to imagine, to create worlds where poverty and worry could not reach him. It was the Great Depression, a time when dreams were a luxury. But Robert had them anyway. He painted, sketched, and filled notebooks with stories. Long before he ever picked up a script, he was a storyteller in his own right, restless, curious, and quietly defiant. Yet even in those early years there was a shadow beneath the light. He was shy, often unsure of himself, and wary of authority. Teachers saw potential but also rebellion. Friends saw charm but also distance. Redford was never one to fit neatly into a mold, even then. When he graduated high school, he earned a baseball scholarship to the University of Colorado. For a moment, it looked as if his path would be that of an athlete, not an artist. But the young man from Santa Monica had other battles to fight, mostly with himself. He drank heavily, partied harder, and lost his scholarship before his second year. In his own words, he was adrift, reckless, and running from something I didn't yet understand. What followed would change him forever. Disillusioned with America, Redford left for Europe. He painted in Paris, sketched in Florence, and lived in cheap rooms surrounded by art and strangers. Those months abroad reshaped his soul. He learned that art was not something one did, it was something one lived. He walked through cathedrals and vineyards, sat in cafes with writers and dreamers, and realized that beauty and sorrow often shared the same breath. When he returned home, he was no longer the aimless boy who had lost his scholarship. He was an artist in search of a voice, and when he found acting, it was as though every restless night in Europe had prepared him for this. He enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. He had no money, little confidence, but an undeniable spark. Acting was a mirror, and Redford looked into it with both fear and fascination. He began appearing on Broadway in the early 1960s, where his combination of boyish innocence and emotional intelligence made audiences lean in. By 1963, with Barefoot in the Park, he had become the talk of New York, the new kind of leading man, charming but vulnerable, confident but human. Hollywood was watching. Redford's first major film, Inside Daisy Clover, 1965, introduced him to the big screen. But it was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, that transformed him from actor to legend. Alongside Paul Newman, he redefined what it meant to be a Hollywood hero: witty, flawed, rebellious, and deeply human. The chemistry between Redford and Newman was lightning in a bottle. Off-screen, they were friends and equals, men who respected one another's silence as much as their laughter. The film became an instant classic, and Redford became a symbol of American cool. Through the 1970s, he seemed unstoppable. The Sting, 1973, reunited him with Newman and won universal acclaim. The Way We Were, 1973, showed his tender side opposite Barbra Streisand, and All the President's Men, 1976, proved his intelligence as he portrayed journalist Bob Woodward in the political thriller that defined a generation. He was handsome, yes, but more than that, he was credible. You believed him, even when he said little. That quiet authenticity became his trademark. But with each success, Redford felt a growing unease. Fame, he would later say, was a mask that can suffocate you. He was adored by millions, yet felt increasingly isolated. The world saw perfection, he saw pressure, and beneath the surface of his golden career, a far deeper story was unfolding, one few would ever know. Long before the world called him a superstar, Robert Redford was a husband and a father. In 1958, before the fame, he married a young woman named Lola Van Wagenen, intelligent, compassionate, and independent. They shared a quiet dream, to build a meaningful life, not one made of headlines but of heart. Together, they had 4 children: Scott, Shauna, David, and Amy. For a while, life was peaceful, full of books, laughter, and the simple chaos of raising kids. But one morning, tragedy struck in a way no parent ever recovers from. Their first child, baby Scott, died from sudden infant death syndrome at just 2.5 months old. Redford was shattered. The man who had already known the sting of insecurity now faced the most crushing loss imaginable. He later admitted, "You never get over something like that. You just learn to live with it, but it changes you forever." Friends say he became quieter after that, more reflective, more guarded. He buried himself in work, in art, in control. He tried to make sense of a world that could be so breathtaking one moment and so merciless the next. Fame soon arrived, and with it the distance that fame brings. Redford was on set more than he was home. He adored his family, but struggled to balance them with his perfectionism and his desire to build something lasting. Lola remained his anchor, but the cracks deepened with each passing year. By 1985, after nearly 3 decades together, they quietly divorced, without scandal, without anger, but with enormous sadness. They had grown in different directions, he said, but the truth was simpler and sadder. Grief had changed him, and fame had stolen the time they needed to heal. By the 1980s, Robert Redford was not just an actor. He was a force of nature. He had everything: fame, wealth, respect. And yet those who knew him best said he often looked tired behind the eyes. He was a perfectionist. Every frame, every line, every performance had to mean something. He was not interested in celebrity. He was chasing truth. But the more he searched for it, the more he seemed haunted by the ghosts of his past. When he directed Ordinary People 1980, critics called it a masterpiece. It won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director. The story, a family broken by grief and silence, mirrored his own pain. Redford poured himself into it, exploring the kind of emotions he rarely discussed in public. He later said that film was the closest thing to therapy I've ever done. Behind the camera, he found control. In storytelling, he found temporary peace. But outside the set, the perfectionist still battled himself. He once confessed, "I always felt like I wasn't enough. No matter what I achieved, something inside me kept whispering, 'Do more, be more, prove more.'" To the world, he was the Sundance Kid, immortal, confident, golden. But in private, he carried the weight of guilt, loss, and the relentless pursuit of something that could never fill the void. After years of solitude, Redford's life took an unexpected turn in the 1990s when he met Sibylle Sagers, a German-born multimedia artist whose work centered on nature, spirituality, and the environment, themes close to his heart. She was serene where he was restless, reflective where he was self-critical. Their connection was not built on Hollywood glamour, but on shared purpose. She saw not the legend, but the man, the wounded, searching artist beneath the surface. Together, they built a quiet life in the mountains of Utah, surrounded by the wilderness he loved most. In 2009, after more than a decade together, they married in a small ceremony in Hamburg, Germany. No flashing cameras, no headlines, just 2 souls finding peace after long journeys apart. For Redford, this marriage was different. It was about stillness, art, and acceptance. Sibylle became not only his partner but his mirror, reflecting back to him the beauty and the fragility he had spent a lifetime portraying on screen. She encouraged him to paint again, to write, to listen to the wind instead of the noise. For a while, it seemed that the man who had spent decades searching for meaning had finally found it in love and nature. By now, the world knew Robert Redford not only as an actor but as a builder of dreams. In 1981, he had founded the Sundance Institute in Utah, named after his most iconic role. It was meant as a haven for independent filmmakers, a place where stories that might never reach Hollywood could finally find their voice. What began as a small workshop became the beating heart of independent cinema, the Sundance Film Festival. Through it, Redford changed the landscape of American film forever. He gave unknown artists their first chance, their first screen, their first breath of freedom. When people asked why he did it, his answer was simple: because art needs truth, and truth needs a home. That same conviction shaped his environmental activism. He spoke of climate change long before it was fashionable, donated his time and money to conservation efforts, and spent decades protecting the natural beauty of the American West. He had become, without trying to be, one of the last true moral voices of Hollywood, a man who believed that fame was not for indulgence but for impact. In the final years of his life, Robert Redford appeared serene. He painted, hiked, and lived quietly with Sibyl in the mountains. But as his wife later revealed, serenity did not mean peace. Behind that calm smile still lived the shadows of loss and perfectionism that had followed him since youth. He carried a sadness no one could see, she said after his death. He hid it behind his art, behind his strength, behind his silence. Friends noticed the same thing, that quiet pause in conversation, the faraway look when he spoke of family. He had achieved everything, yet carried the feeling that he had not done enough. The death of his son, the collapse of his first marriage, the friends lost along the way, these ghosts never left him. In his final interviews, Redford spoke of time with a kind of reverence. "Pain teaches you what joy really is," he said. "You can't understand one without the other." Those words now sound almost like a farewell, a confession wrapped in wisdom. On September 16, 2025, the world awoke to the news that Robert Redford had passed away peacefully in his sleep at his home in Sundance, Utah. He was 89 years old. His family was by his side, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the mountains that had been both his refuge and his muse. The news broke hearts across generations. Tributes poured in from everywhere, fellow actors, directors, presidents, and fans who had grown up watching him ride across deserts, fight for truth, and whisper love beneath 1,000 sunsets. To Hollywood, he was the last of a dying breed, a man who made fame look effortless and decency look cool. To his family, he was simply Bob, a father, husband, and artist who never stopped searching for the light inside the dark. His wife's revelation after his passing, that he had suffered for years from quiet depression and emotional exhaustion, did not diminish his legend. It made it human. It made it real. Because behind every perfect image was a man still trying to forgive himself, still trying to understand why beauty and pain always seemed to walk hand in hand. Redford's death felt like the closing of a golden chapter in American film, but his influence will outlive generations. The stories he told, the artists he inspired, and the mountains he protected remain living testaments to a man who gave more of himself to the world than it ever truly knew. And in the end, the secret his wife revealed was not a scandal, but a truth, that even the strongest hearts can ache, even the brightest souls can carry shadows, and even the legends we worship are, in the quietest hours, simply human. Robert Redford's life was proof that beauty and sorrow are born from the same fire, and that sometimes the greatest art comes not from joy, but from the courage to live through pain. So when we remember him, we remember not just the actor, or the director, or the festival founder. We remember the man who lived, who lost, who loved, and who finally, after a lifetime of giving the world his art, found peace in silence.